Hey, this is Malika of Evanston Live TV, and welcome to the live City Clerk Forum. We have the candidates running for City Clerk. Who has what it takes to be City Clerk of Evanston? This is a huge, huge position in our city. This position is about the people. We're hoping that it gets the Foia responsibilities back into one place with the city clerk office. It's a very powerful position, and it is the position that we have come to learn from City Clerk Devon Reed, who's one of the moderators tonight. He has taught us how important this office is and how it helps the public to stay engaged and informed and in knowing your rights and getting information, being able to FOIA information that you should have a right to. And I've learned so much about this position from his term in office. And I was like, Evanston Live TV has to host the City Clerk Forum with City Clerk Devon Reed so that we can learn as much about these candidates as we possibly can. Yes, so people please stay engaged, pay attention tonight. We will be opening up for questions tonight from the residents. But right now I'm going to introduce our sponsor and our moderators. I am so excited that C&W Market has sponsored tonight's event for the City Clerk Forum. We have the owner, Clarence Weaver. Wendy, is Wendy joining us tonight, Clarence?
You know, I'm playing two roles today. I'm just playing the Weaver side.
Okay, you playing the Weaver side, yes.
Yeah, this C part of C&W.
Yes, yes. So Wendy, his beautiful wife, she won't be joining us tonight. Clarence has got it under control. Clarence, thank you so much.
And by the way, she did spin down and mention that she is on the call paying attention, so that's good news.
Yes, hi Wendy. She's out there listening. We love Wendy. Thank you so much, C&W, for sponsoring tonight's event. Thank you. I love it when the community comes together and supports and collaborates. And this is a very important forum tonight. So Clarence, if you want to take 60 seconds to tell the people all about C&W, you guys are doing so many amazing things in the community. You're not just a market, but you really serve the community on a whole nother level.
Well, you know, thank you, Malika, and everybody that's on the panel for discussion. You know, we've been in business for 6 years now, and we've done some activities. Matter of fact, Devon and Eduardo actually attended a couple of events that we did across the street when Buku's was active. So we've done work with the city clerk office. We've done things to get, you know, the right information out from our location. So we've been participants whenever there's a right time for us to be engaged and involved. So we look forward to participating with whoever wins here. But obviously the question was around the 60 seconds for C&W. And, you know, we have been active for 6 years. We, C&W Market and Ice Cream Parlor, we knew that there was a need to put a grocer facility, a better one in place than what existed at the time that the facility was open. There was many families that watched their kids go back and forth to school and came by, and at one point everybody was saying, we know that this is a grocer or a store for the youth, but we've expanded, and the parents come in, the community comes in, and everybody's able to see that we do more than just provide snacks. You know, we provide frozen goods, we provide you know, food, grocery products for the community. Since the pandemic hit, we've been very, very focused on providing groceries to those in need. We started off serving 25 families, working with, you know, Jennifer Edibles as well. And, you know, independently, when we moved into that space, the demand picked up, and we ended up, now we provide groceries to over 220 families a week. So this pandemic has caused us to take a shift. And, you know, it's a shift that we did not know that we were going to have to take. But what was great was the fact that everything that we provided to the community is what we have in our store. and we have access to. Obviously it's a small space, but it's the right space to do just in time, processing, so we can get what's needed to the community at the right time. And we just happen to be in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. And the pandemic, unfortunately, kind of allow those to rise to the top that are doing great things. And, with the community support, Malika, as you stated, I mean, we don't work in a vacuum. This is the first time that we've been able to provide collective work with Evanston Community Foundation, Evanston A, District 65, and those that, provide support in the community have allowed us to help families, and we will continue to do that, and that's our goal. And in turn, we want to be a vessel when there's information that needs to get out to the community. Whoever wins this election, we look to provide the same support and platform that we provided Devon Reed at our location as well. So good luck to the candidates, and Malika, thanks for the opportunity to say a little something about what we do on behalf of myself and my wife, Wendy.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Clarence and Wendy. Wendy's out there watching. Thank you so much to CNW. Thank you for your service. Okay, so let me introduce our moderators tonight. Clarence will be asking, he's one of our moderators as well. But I'm so happy that we also have with us tonight City Clerk Devon Reed. I couldn't think of a better person to be a part of the forum, the City Clerk Forum, than the current City Clerk right now, Devon Reed.
Yes. Again, thank you for having me, Malika. It's an honor to be here with a great slate of candidates for the clerk's office, some who I know and some who I don't, and I've gotten to virtually know them by watching all of the forums over the last few weeks and months. And again, Mr. Weaver, it's always an honor to be in your presence, even virtually. It's always great having folks in the community, particularly in the Fifth Ward, a place where we know that we have lower voter turnout, that we can partner with and be true community partners with to increase voter turnout. And CNW Ice Cream Parlor has been, not just for the clerk's office, but for the city as a whole, really kind of a hub for outreach to the Fifth Ward. So thank you for all of your service to the community. Thank you. Yeah, and just very quickly about myself, I'm Devon Reed. I'm the current city clerk. I was elected 4 years ago at the ripe old age of 24. And I was elected Evanston's youngest city clerk with 66% of the vote. And we ran on a campaign of increasing transparency. We've doubled the number of Freedom of Information Act requests and public disclosures through Foia over the last 4 years. We ran on a campaign of really using data and records to tackle issues of racial equity. And we've led on those issues with the official reparations memorandum and adding a question regarding racial ethnicity to our financial disclosure forms, which allows us to capture the racial composition of our boards, committees, and commissions. And then finally, leaders on engaging with residents. And that's, we send 20 to 30,000 text messages per election cycle to engage with voters who don't traditionally turn out. We do host events like we have with Mr. Weaver and others to do voter registration and voter education. And we've been leaders on increasing digital access to records by digitizing all of the ordinances going back to the 1950s. So an honor to be here, and I'm really looking forward to getting in and grilling some of the candidates and really having a thoughtful, not grilling, but having a thoughtful discussion about the issues and hopefully educating each other in the community. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us tonight, Clerk Reed. Our next moderator is Dan Coyne. Many of you know him in the community, and we're happy he's joining us tonight. He got hit by a car yesterday, and that shows you how strong he is. He's like, nope, this is important. This forum is important. I will be there. Dan Coyne.
Hi, Dan Coyne, and as a neighbor, I just want to give a shout out to our sponsor and to Malika for the service that you provide our entire community. This is a game changer, and Malika especially, what you're doing through your service with Evanston Live is really providing something that's quite unique in this pandemic. environment that none of us knew was going to be here a year ago. And here we are, and you've helped us to understand and get to know a lot of the candidates. And I also want to just give a shout out to all of the candidates running for city clerk. You already, each individual, have succeeded. Your very nature of being in the mix has helped lift up this entire process. And I just want to say thank you to all of you. Regardless of how the votes turn out, you've already succeeded. Thank you for being engaged. We need you in our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you. And yes, they are all winners. It takes some guts and some fire and power to even start the campaign, to even jump in this race, and for such a powerful position in the city as well. I want to introduce to everyone our team working tonight. Venicia Mayo Burton, you all are going to hear her as our timekeeper. And we have India Burton. She will be making sure that there are no disruptions tonight. So everyone, please be sure that you are muted. She's only going to give you maybe 2 times, and then you got to go if you keep disrupting us. Okay, so she's got that under control. My team, I love them, couldn't do this without them. And now we are going to bring on our candidates. I am so excited about these candidates. All right, so candidates, you have 60 seconds to introduce yourself to the public. We'll start with current Deputy City Clerk, Eduardo Gomez.
Thanks, Malika, and thank you, Mr. Weaver, for sponsoring this event. Thank you to Clerk Reed for joining us here to ask questions that the residents want to know, and of course to Dan Coyne as well. My name is Eduardo Gomez. As Malika said, I'm the current Deputy City Clerk for the City of Evanston, and I am running as a write-in candidate for the City Clerk's office. I currently live in the 2nd Ward, and I look forward to discussing the issues in depth and hopefully getting the residents an opportunity to get to know about me and my platform and what I look to accomplish as hopefully the next city clerk.
Thank you, Eduardo. Next, we'll have Misty Wittenberg.
Hi, thank you, Malika, and thank you to Clerk Reed and Dan Coyne and our Wendy and Clarence Weaver, whose services I realize I've been underutilizing only for ice cream. So my name is Misty Wittenberg and I live in the 5th Ward. And I'm so excited to be here and to be hearing all the questions that residents have. I'm running because we don't need just ongoing transparency. We need someone to go in and fight for transparency and the accountability and the harm that have been caused over, I can't limit it to the last administration because we don't know. It was really this one where we realized what we didn't know and how it was harming us and the public interest. And that's why I'm running. I want to get in there and I want to ensure the public has all of the information, including what has been misfed into this campaign and really to our community over the last 4 years for certain. So I welcome the public's toughest questions. I hope that everyone here who's a candidate has an opportunity to answer, and that I encourage everybody, if you're on the fence, you should choose the write-in candidate who, it's a little more work, but who best fits your vision, because it's best to have a choice. It's always better in campaigns to be able to hear from
15 seconds.
Thank you. I'll finish up. From being able to hear multiple perspectives and have at least one other candidate who can push the other so you can have the most full information in your voting. Thank you.
Thank you, Misty. Jackson Poller.
Hi, thanks. Thank you, Malika, Mr. Weaver, Devon, everybody for putting this together. I'm very excited to be here. So my name's Jackson Poller. I live in the 1st Ward, lived there my whole life. Went to undergraduate at Northwestern, and I've been organizing in Evanston for just over 4 years now. I've organized in Evanston and Chicago and on Northwestern's campus. And I'm also currently a law student, and I've already had the chance to put that education to work, fighting for democracy and open government in Evanston through trying to assist the Evanston voter initiative, which is something I have faith will come back once we have a new council. So I'm running as a write-in candidate because I believe that the next clerk needs to have a number of things. The next clerk needs to have integrity and devotion to transparency and equity and inclusion. But the next city clerk also needs to have a good understanding of what the legal mechanisms in place are and what the legal barriers are. And then next city clerk needs to understand where those barriers are weak and where the most impactful change can be made. And I believe that's a perspective I could uniquely bring to both this race and the office. And I'm really looking forward to discussing all the tough issues tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackson. Next, we have Stephanie Mendoza. Stephanie?
Oh, yes. Hi. My name is Stephanie Mendoza. I've been a Ninth Ward resident for the past 10 years. I have been happy to live here in the Ninth Ward. I love this community. And, you know, when I first arrived to Evanston, I was a young and I did not know how to navigate our community services and really what to do in order to connect with our community. I really am thankful that I connected with our nonprofit community, and the nonprofit community lifted me through. And through that connection, I was able to finish my degree at Loyola University. I have a degree in political science and a minor in Spanish literature. I'm raising my two children. My two children go to Washington School and have a little baby. And I'm running for office because of that experience. Because when I initially moved to Evanston, there was really no way for me to know how to navigate our local government, and also, you know, not only navigate, but find the information that I need.
15 seconds.
Through my experience as being an Evanston resident, you know, I know that there is a real need for community outreach, and there's a real need for transparency to make sure that our community trusts the decision-making that our city is doing, and make sure that it's in their best favor. I'm also running because I highly believe in access, and without our community members at the forefront of every decision that we make, we are simply not making the right decisions. I'm running.
Hi.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie. And we have Cynthia Beebe.
My name is Cynthia Beebe. I'm running as a write-in candidate for city clerk. Thank you to Mr. Weaver and Ms. Gardner, Clerk Reed for having us, and Mr. Coyne. I've lived in the 7th Ward for 37 years, most of my life. I've raised my son here. He's now a senior at Evanston High School. And when he was a student, well, he's still a student, but I was on the PTA board, and I coached him on his sports in Evanston baseball and why soccer and so on and so forth. I have 2 degrees from Northwestern. The second is a master's in journalism, and the point being that I have a strong belief in the First Amendment. But I'm a retired federal agent. I was an ATF agent for almost 30 years, and I have a lot of experience in government, both state, local, and federal government. I know how it works. I know how to make it work. I know how to get big projects done.
15 seconds.
And I love Evanston. I work hard for you. And just thank you for having me. And I look forward to answering your questions tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Cynthia. Thank you. Thank you to all our candidates. So we are going to kick out the first question that will be coming from me, Evanston Live TV. The first question, I want each of you to pick one opponent and ask that opponent a question. Okay? So let's start with Deputy Clerk Gomez.
Yes, thank you, Malika. Wow, so many people to choose from. Let's see, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Cynthia Beebe, I'll ask you the question. My question to you is, what is your vision for the clerk's office and how do you hope to achieve that vision?
Well, good question. The two primary jobs of the clerk are to serve as the local election officer, and that's what I'm actually would be the most interested and excited about. I would look to increase education to our younger people, to school-age children, and work with District 65 and District 202, go into the classrooms, bring other elected officials into the classrooms. When kids are maybe in 3rd grade and then 7th grade and then juniors in high school, with the idea that we want to teach them to get interested in voting and understand about voting when they're little, so that when they're 9 or 10 years old, they go home and they say to their mom or their dad or grandma or uncle or whoever, boy, I can't wait until I'm 18 years old and I'm old enough to vote. And I think
30
that's
seconds.
really important. And then of course the clerk has to manage the business records, which is something I'm very organized, I'm very goal oriented. That's something that would be very easy for me to do, get things done on time. I realize Foia is also a big issue, but I want to improve communications and outreach with the entire community.
Time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Eduardo. Next, we'll go with Misty. Please pick an opponent and ask them a question.
Okay. I hate to pick on Miss Beebe, but I have actually a real question, even just as a resident.
Sure.
Your background, as a federal agent, I just wonder, how does that impact how you feel about transparency under FOIA, and do you feel like it makes you more adept at it, or less likely to be transparent, or more likely?
Well, I think it makes me far more adept at it because I had to deal with it for almost 30 years. I dealt with FOIA on both sides of the issue. I know FOIA up one side and down the other. I know how it works. And I know how to, most importantly for the Evanston residents, I know how to make it work. I know how to help citizens get what they want, which in the end, the point of FOIA is to help individuals get the information that they're requesting from the government. And the way you do that, because a FOIA request is a legal document, is to word your FOIA request accurately or as well as possible. And I can help residents do that.
30 seconds.
That's crucial. And I also know how to help them appeal if they're denied. You can appeal to the city and you can also appeal to the state. So I'm very familiar with FOIA. And as I said, I have a master's in journalism. I'm a big believer in the First Amendment. And just because you're a federal agent doesn't mean, it's not all cloak and dagger. Sometimes we're the good guys too.
She says sometimes they're the good guys. All right. Okay, thank you, Misty. Thank you, Cynthia. Jackson, please pick an opponent.
Sure. So I'll send this one back to Misty. You've been around for a long time fighting for transparency from the citizen standpoint. A lot of us know you from there. I just want to hear more about how you would approach the task of working with other city staff, like working with the city manager's office, for example, to make all of these processes more transparent and more accessible to the rest of us.
Yes, and I'm sorry, my 6-year-old is currently banging on the door, so I'm going to tell her I will be with you in a minute. So my goal, and as I've approached everything, is to start working with city staff and city officials, and that wouldn't change in the clerk's office. I would always start from that position. But then secondly, I would be in there to serve the public, and that's the role I've been trying to do from this point on. I'm so sorry, it's distracting my daughter. But so I would be going to the PAC office, the Public Access Bureau, whenever there was anything in dispute, because they also are working for the public interest, and that is an easy way to resolve issues without having, drawn out arguments.
30 seconds.
And yeah, that's really how I approach everything now. That's how I approach everything then. I want to collaborate. I want to work well with others, but in the end, I am there to serve the public, and that is just how I will maintain it.
Okay. Thank you, Misty. Thank you, Jackson. And Stephanie Mendoza, please pick an opponent.
I'll ask Jackson a question. Jackson, like I know you understand that transparency and is important, but also, you know, we also know that the clerk is the first person to see a lot of the different ordinances our city is working on. How will you ensure that the city is working in the best interest of our community members and make meaningful connections with our community in order to have their input and also increase I would say a trust in our the decisions our city is making for our residents?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think there are really two pieces to this. And one is something that I think the city of Evanston just needs to do more of across the board, and that's do less of deciding from the dais what it is that all of our residents need, and actually taking the resources we have to our various communities, to all 9 wards first, and actually asking, this is what these are the resources we have available. What do you need? How can you best be served by the clerk's office, for example, with the understanding that the clerk is kind of a doorway into a lot of the various other things that Evanston City Council does. And
30 seconds.
I don't think that sort of trust can really be built without taking that initiative to go to all 9 wards and have those conversations and bring people in. And that's something that I would want to do. And the other piece of it would be finding a way to work with the other city staff to make the legislative writing process more open and accountable than it is, because right now it's not particularly accountable. Resolutions
Time.
and ordinances get.
Okay, thank you, Jackson. Thank you. And Benicia says time, just take 3 seconds to just wrap up your thought.
Make it more accountable, or make it more accessible. That's the end.
Okay, thank you, Jackson. Thank you. And Stephanie and Cynthia, please pick an opponent.
I guess Stephanie Mendoza, why don't you tell us what you would like to accomplish in, you know, if you are elected clerk?
Yeah, you know, I really would like to mend relationships between our city and our community. I think it's very important that our community members trust what is happening in the city, but through trust, I think the city also needs to make sure they are honest and open and accountable anytime they are making mistakes, because I think we're all human. We're not computers, we make mistakes, but I think accountability and building trust with our community members and the clerk's office is very important. I think that as a community, we will accomplish really, really great things. And at the end of the day, it only benefits our residents and their ability to live here and raise their families here, and not
30
worry
seconds.
whether or not they can continue to live in Evanston. I myself have been in that situation where I've wondered if I can stay in this community. And I just want to make it more accessible and transparent for our community members.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For those questions. Now I'll turn it over to our sponsor, Clarence Weaver, to ask the candidates question.
Sure, I think the question I have is a general question, which pretty much spans across the board. So I'll start off with Cynthia. You know, knowing that the clerk's office is kind of sometimes viewed inappropriately, right? Sometimes the community may view the clerk position as more of an administrative resource, but knowing that there's a governing component, and also knowing that the city clerk is the first line of contact with government. So how do you feel that you can reach the diversity of Evanston in that position, and how would you approach that? And that question will be same to all the candidates, starting with Cynthia.
I would say probably in 2 ways. The first, well, more than 2, but the first way would be to go out into the community to meet with people in person with community centers and community groups, the high schools and the schools, and talk with people in person as much as possible. Once COVID is history, I think talking in person is the best way to get to get information from people and to give information to people. So I would look to interact as much as possible in person. But I also think if we could make some kind of a simple internet communication system where people can openly ask questions, and we, the clerk's office, can respond to those questions so that the
30
public
seconds.
can read those, the questions and our answers. And if people have questions about something that doesn't necessarily pertain to the clerk's office, I think it's incumbent upon us to either find that answer or to tell them where to go to get that answer. So I think to reach out to speak with people, to meet with people, to find out what they're thinking, but also to make it easy for them. And if the internet is the way to make it easier for many people, let's do that too.
Time.
Okay.
Very much. And the same question would be to Jackson. And also, I would also like to kind of add with the focus that you mentioned about your legal background, and congratulations on going after your degree in that space. How would you approach from that position dealing with the community, and then how would you leverage the legal resources with the city in that role as well?
Sure. So this gets into a little bit of what the question was that Stephanie asked me. I think that part one of really building and retaining trust between the city and the public is going to have to be going to all 9 wards in whatever form that might take, Zoom meetings while we're still in a pandemic, in person once the pandemic is over, and sharing what the clerk's office currently can do, how you get into this process of running for office, if you need parking placards, even something as simple as that, how can the city clerk's office help you there? And also asking, what more do you need? What isn't clear about what the city government does? What don't you understand that the city clerk's office can better help with?
30 seconds.
And then the other piece of that, of how I would want to leverage my legal knowledge, would just be in understanding what state law and Evanston City Code actually allows the clerk's office to do to make things like the legislative process more transparent, and sharing the efforts that the clerk's office is making very publicly with the Evanston citizens, with the constituents, to say, this is what I'm trying to do, this is what you deserve to have access to, and these are what the roadblocks are.
Thank you. The next question would be to Eduardo. Same question, but more so around, I'm a 41-year IT guy, and I understand data and I understand freedom of information. In your experience and position as deputy, what have you observed needs to be made more available to the public, or to further some of the causes that have been put in place by current leadership? Reed.
Yeah, so I want to expand on many of the things that Clerk Reed has done for our community, which have been an improvement. And that, to me, is going out and partnering up with some of the organizations that we have here in Evanston. For example, the Evanston Public Library, or including the League of Women Voters, going to them, meeting with their folks and letting them know how we can be here to better serve them. It's also looking at attending the ward meetings with our council members to, again, let them know about what the office does and what it's capable of doing, and hearing the feedback that they want to give us, so that way we can better improve the experience when they go into our office, and that way they know that there's someone in that role that is going to advocate heavily for any resource or service that they're seeking.
Thank you, Eduardo. Next question goes to Misty. Obviously, Misty, I'm formulating the questions specific to the individuals. And one of the key things that you mentioned was about the part about the fight. What have you observed in knowing in that position, you're going to have people coming in having issues and concerns that they're intimate about? But what fight do you feel needs to be addressed in that position? What is it that you've experienced or heard in the community that needs to be addressed at the city clerk level?
that's hard to fit in 60 seconds. But I think that we actually need a substantial change of culture, and that's not going to occur without transparency and accountability from the start. You had mentioned at the beginning about how can we reach people? I think it's about incorporating them from the beginning, and it's about me, I'm a 38-year-old white Jewish woman. My perspective as any candidates is limited to my own. And so incorporating different backgrounds from the start and letting them know that they are able to hold me to account for any misstep always, and that I will appreciate it, even just having feedback. We need to change
30 seconds.
Thank you. The reason we lost Foia services was because of policy and HR practices that the city has admitted are racist, applied only to Black officials. And you don't know that because that video where it's on is not listed. We are avoiding accountability and spending a lot of public money to avoid that. This all needs to be transparent. We need to hold those people accountable, and we need someone who's driven to do that from the start.
Time.
Thank you. Thank you, Misty. So the final question that I have goes to Stephanie Mendoza. Stephanie, the same question around the meet and greet, being the face of city government. You also mentioned political science background, not-for-profit. What is it that you feel with what you bring to the table also deals with some of the issues that you've observed needs to be addressed in that city clerk space?
Yeah, for me, I think one of the issues that we have now is just a lack of trust, and I think at many times we lack collaboration between our community and our city, our places of worship, our nonprofit communities, and because we know at the end of the day we're all trying to help our community members, but I think that if there's no collaboration, there's a lack of input from our most vulnerable community members, from our community members that suffer the most through our decision making. One of the things I think I bring to the table is that I've been actively collaborating with organizations, with the city. I've been actively collaborating with our nonprofit communities, our
30 seconds.
And our places of worship. And this is something I want to bring to the clerk's office. I want to build trust. And Clarence, on Saturdays, for the grocery giveaway, I tell you this corner here, CW, this is what I want Evanston to look at. The collaboration that exists at your grocery giveaway every Saturday, that is what the clerk's office should be doing for our community.
Time.
Partnerships.
All right, thank you. I'll turn that back over to you, Malika. Thank you very much for the opportunity to ask questions. And great job, folks. Thanks for your answers as well. Malika, you're mute. Can't hear you, Malika.
Can you all hear me now?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you so much, Clarence. Those were some great questions. So it's got my wheels spinning for some follow-up questions. And I want the candidates, if you want to respond to another candidate, you are free to do that. Just let me know if you want to question another opponent or respond to something that they have said. So now we're going to move on to City Clerk Devon Reed. Now, if I were you, I would be very nervous because he knows this position inside and out. Devon has been through it and has been a fighter, fearless leader in this position and has done so much for the community. So Devon, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, well, this is just my first question before it swings back around to me, so don't worry too much. The second round is where you should worry. So first, I will ask this question of Jackson. Have you ever filed a FOIA with the city of Evanston? And what were you looking for, and describe your experience?
Yes, I filed a FOIA request. I don't remember exactly when it was temporally in relation to the Evanston Voter Initiative legal action, but I noticed that the city had retained a peculiar outside private counsel to represent the electoral board and represent the electoral board both during the initial hearing and the further proceedings. And I was curious what the extent of the connections were. And I think I had a bit of an easier thing to be looking for. So I was able to navigate the next request software fairly easily.
30 seconds.
Type out what I was looking for, and your office was quite quick to get back within the required amount of time. Although I could see how certain other documents, like related to police stops or something, might be a little more difficult to find through what we've got right now. Overall, I thought your office has taken the process in a good direction.
Certainly. And when I say what was your experience, I don't necessarily mean particularly with our office, but just the experience overall. That question then goes to Cynthia Beebe. Have you ever filed a FOIA with the city of Evanston? And if so, describe your experience. And if your answer is no, then better yet, for someone who's been on the other side of FOIA, describe an experience where you've assisted a resident in navigating FOIA.
Well, I have never personally filed a FOIA with Evanston. I've never filed a FOIA with anyone. I have worked on the other side of FOIA, not for Evanston. It was as a federal agent. So I can't speak to Evanston, but I can tell you that, of course, they were related to law enforcement, but they were taken very seriously. And the timeframes, for example, were taken seriously. Lawyers would come by and say things like, there's some things that you can kind of let roll and others that you can't, and you cannot let FOIA requests just sit in your drawer, as the clock ticks, for example.
I apologize if I can jump in, because more specifically, can you describe a time, if there is one, where you've assisted a constituent or someone filing a FOIA with navigating the FOIA process? And can you describe that experience of assisting them?
Oh, yeah. I mean, sure. I was never actually the actual FOIA clerk, but I became familiar with the system. Sure. And it's very much kind of walking them through the process. And when they have questions, you need to ask someone. It's like conducting almost like a subject interview. You want to find out what it is that they're looking for, because sometimes people have a hard time articulating that. And if they don't know exactly what it is they're looking for, I can guarantee you the lawyers on the other end of the request aren't going to know what they're looking for either. So it's that help them figure out what exactly it is that they want, and then how to help them to word that request appropriately so that they get the answers they're looking for. And then, of course, just to be an advocate as the process goes along. If they call, follow up, and if they're on answer their questions. So.
Thank you. Eduardo, I think I know the answer to this. Have you ever, maybe you have you ever filed a FOIA with the city of Evanston? Describe your experience. And certainly you have had plenty of experience on the other side of FOIA. So please describe an instance, if you have not filed a FOIA with the city of Evanston or anyone else, please describe an experience where you've assisted a resident with filing a FOIA.
So Clerk Reed, I haven't filed a FOIA, but I'll answer the second part because, like you said, I have been on the other side, and it's varied. And my experience has been when someone has inquired about filing a FOIA, like Ms. Beebe said, it's important that they know what they're looking for. And in many instances, let's say, for example, a police record, it's important that they give as much detail as possible so that way we can ensure that the turnaround time is less than the 10-day statutory limit. And for instances, when they are looking for communications, I want to make sure that they also give us a timeline so that way we can ensure that we prevent them from being considered unduly burdensome and not giving them the responsive record. So we want to make sure that they fit the parameters in order to ensure that, again, we do a good time in turning around that FOIA request as quickly as we can.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Next, Eduardo, Jackson, Cynthia. Stephanie, I know that you are not
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, I am muted. All right. Okay, Stephanie, you are next. Have you ever filed a FOIA with the city of Evanston? Describe your experience. What were you looking for, and describe your experience? And if you haven't filed a FOIA with Evanston, anywhere, have you filed a FOIA anywhere?
Yeah, so I've actually filed FOIAs with the county just through my work as a political campaign manager. I always have to, look for ballots that are requested, mail-in ballots, voter information, just things like that have to do with campaigning. I actually, through a conversation with our clerk, I mailed the city asking for all of the petitions that had been filed from candidates, because through my love of just looking at petitions and because it's what I do for a living. But I got a response from Eddie, and he told me there was IT problems, and I never received the documents.
30 seconds.
After the city had taken down all the information from the website that you had posted to make it public and accessible for us. So I unfortunately was not able to get that information when it was accessible, and then I requested it and it was never fulfilled. So that was my experience with filing a FOIA with the city of Evanston.
Thank you. And then I think lastly on our list is Misty. Have you ever filed a FOIA with the city of Evanston? What were you looking for, and describe your experience?
Well, I can tell you that, oops, sorry, I'm trying to charge my phone at the same time. I'm just going to take it out. In one of my FOIAs, and I don't remember what it was, I believe it was a request from the mayor to you asking who filed the most FOIAs. So I know for sure that I'm on the top 10 list. And I'm also the organization I founded, Evanston Leads, which started out of the Civic Center to teach people how to do FOIA requests, was also on the list. So apologies to Deputy Clerk. He's often had to respond to FOIA requests about internal communications about my FOIA requests, just so I can see what they started. My
30 seconds.
FOIA is, thank you, is nearly strictly for its intended purpose under FOIA, largely to monitor public government and make sure, and officials, and make sure they're acting in the public interest. And I also FOIA'd Jackson, what he FOIA'd, because use of outside counsel is a huge issue and one I'm very interested in. So I had a FOIA similar to that, and I applaud him for also making it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that question, City Clerk Reed. We will definitely come back to you to ask more questions of the candidates. Next, we will go on to Dan Coyne. Dan Coyne, question for the candidates? Is Dan Coyne? Dan, you need to unmute.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry about that.
Here you go.
Yeah, thank you all. I'll probably ask you to answer in this order, if that's okay. Cynthia, then Eduardo, Misty, Jackson, and Stephanie could end. And I've been a mental health therapist for 30 years working with kids. And so I would be remiss if I didn't ask a social worky question. And it really has to do with your family of origin. Contrast and compare that to your adult life. And it has to do with where your values came from. I believe that all of us live in an environment that influences how we shape our values. And certainly our family of origin is part of that. But as we get out of our teenage years and enter into our young adulthood, we do differentiate a bit from that and kind of learn what our values really are as an adult. So I know you may only have a minute or two to answer, but can you think about your family of origin? What values did your family instill in your heart and in your life? And how did that shift or change when you became an adult? What values did you keep, and what values did you let go and develop as an adult? And Cynthia, if you could start us off. Thank you.
Okay, you're right. That's a tough one to answer in a minute or two. Well, I grew up, my mom and my dad, they're both deceased now. I had an older brother. He's unfortunately also deceased. But my mom grew up in Evanston. My grandma and grandpa raised my mom in Evanston, just a few blocks from here. My dad was raised in Cincinnati. I grew up in Park Ridge as a little kid. And then I've lived in Evanston most of my life. I'm much older than any of the other candidates. So I was raised at a time when my dad went to work downtown Chicago in a suit and tie, and my mom stayed home and helped run the PTA and the Brownies, and was a great cook and took care of my brother and me. It was kind of like Leave It to Beaver or something. We didn't lock our doors when I was a little kid. When you walked to school and stuff, we just walked down the street to school. So I think, having family, my mom was a remarkable person. When she died, unfortunately, fairly early at Evanston Hospital. She was in Evanston Hospital for quite a few weeks when I was 29 years old. And I will never forget when the mail lady came, and I took 6 months off work to help take care of her. And she came and she said, "Your mother must be a very remarkable person." And I said, "Yes, she is." And she said, "She's
60
had
seconds.
more mail. She's had more mail than any patient we've ever had." And this is back when mail was real mail. And what I would do was I would tape all the cards and the letters and the notes. I would tape them onto the wall because she was losing her memory. And so she could see all the cards, and they were taped all around the wall. So my mom was really a remarkable person. So was my grandmother. I mean, my dad was a very nice guy too, but I would say that the value on family is very important, and taking care of each other and generosity of heart. I guess I would like
15
to believe
seconds.
the most. And I hope I've instilled that in my son.
Thank you, Cynthia. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Eduardo, similar question, if you don't mind.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Coyne. So for those of you that don't know, I'm Mexican. I was born to immigrant parents, and I owe a lot of the values that I have up to this day to my mom. She instilled them in me and my siblings at a very young age. We're devoted Catholics, so religion is a big part of how I conduct myself, both at work and outside. And she instilled in us the values of truth. She instilled in us the values of hard work. She instilled in us the values of patience, and also ensuring that no matter how others treat you, that you treat them far better, and that you beat them with kindness and not hate. And that is the values that I carry around with me when I also am working as a liaison to city clerk's office. My brother, who has autism, he taught me the value of patience, and that is something that has served me very well in my current capacity, dealing with an array of residents. I've always been able to keep a calm and collected demeanor anytime
60 seconds.
when conducting city business. And because of my mother, who wasn't able to communicate very effectively in English, I understood what it meant to be a liaison to someone in need. And so anytime I am in my role here in the city or outside, I make sure that I do the neighborly thing and go out of my way to ensure that people are treated with respect and kindness, so that way they can forward that along to others. And that's how I try to conduct myself every single day.
Thank you, Eduardo. Misty, if it's okay, could you also address this question, the family of origin value question?
Yes. So I've been lucky to have a lot of families of origin in different ways. My childhood family, I grew up in rural Kansas. My mother was a hairdresser and my father was a telephone lineman. I was a first generation college student. We unfortunately had a lot of tragedy that befell our family when I was growing up, including we had two uncles. I had two uncles, my mom's brother and her sister's husband, who died of gun violence. And so this is like, you're gonna make me cry in this question, Dan. But they also, they taught me that I was small and that I would have to be fearless and listen to people. And what they, I think, taught me more than anything other than being resilient is to, I'm trying to think of how to say this, they supported me, even when they didn't understand what I was doing. I moved from Kansas to New York City, and they didn't understand why. In New York City, I had another amazing group of friends that helped me survive a divorce and being laid off at the same time.
60 seconds.
Thank you. Moving back to Evanston, and I've kept those families with me, and here I have a whole new family of people who care so much about what the city means, and we all work together and are always trying to make sure that we're doing the right thing. And they've taught me that value, that I'm going to mess up, and when I do, I have to acknowledge it, and I have to make it better, and I have to be just relentless. We're all trying to do what's good for Evanston, and we all have to keep our eye on that.
Thank you, Misty. Jackson, if you feel comfortable sharing a little bit about your family of origin, what values came out of that experience?
Yeah, I could easily go on for hours talking about this. The one core value that I could think of when thinking of how to answer this question, that I if I'm being fully honest, I can't remember exactly what my parents did to instill this into me, but I think they might be watching this downstairs. I know for a fact that they were able to teach me just a very basic respect for all other people, all other life. And my parents never shied away from acknowledging the fact that I live a quite privileged life, that I'm lucky with where I was born and the house I grew up in. And my parents were able to get it into me, even at a young age, that like the things that I had, access to healthcare, access to a good education, access to a comfortable home, there is no justifiable reason why those things shouldn't be available to everybody. And that's something that's been a core part of who I am for a very long time. And I thank my parents every time I think about this for raising me the right way. And the only real part of that I feel changed as I grew up is when I began undergrad at Northwestern.
60 seconds.
Thank you. Started organizing. I began to politicize that value a little bit more. I got involved with the People's Lobby, Reclaim Evanston, as some of you all might know them, and went to those trainings. And I began to learn, like, more than that respect for all other life. Like my value as a person, my liberation is tied to the liberation of everybody else. As long as there's racist violence going on anywhere in this country or in this world, my value as a person is diminished. As long as people are pouring out on the street, my value as a person is diminished. As long as xenophobia exists, my value as a person is diminished.
15 seconds.
And if I'm really going to liberate myself, I need to fight for everybody, because we all rise together or we all fall.
Thank you, Jackson. Stephanie, if you don't mind sort of closing up this line of answers on the family of origin values.
I could write a book, Dan. Both of my parents are Mexican. They're from Monterrey, Nuevo León. And I actually lived despite being born here in California, I lived the first few years of my life in Tijuana. So my parents immigrated to the United States while I was still living in Tijuana. And then they immigrated. We actually had to stay behind because we were US citizens. We stayed behind and we immigrated along, we came here with my parents to East Tennessee. Going from a place like I was young and I was going to school in California, and going from a very diverse and multilingual community to a rural East Tennessee, where we still had, unfortunately, groups that were meeting and that were not, groups that, so going to that community, and my mom and my dad was a labor rights activist in Mexico. And then he also, when he worked in El Campo, which is, farm picking and California, and my mom worked as a seamstress. They were both very strong advocates for labor rights. And then we
60
moved to
seconds.
California, was involved in Latinos Unidos, and was also a strong advocate. Unfortunately, my parents, although they were strong advocates and knew they had rights, they never really understood how to navigate our government or systems within our community. My parents' rights were abused many times by police. And myself, I was, at one time forced to be, my car, my parents searched in our car and made to sit down, on the side of the sidewalk in front of my school while my parents' car was being searched with a canine. And so I understand, through those values, I understand what it is like to fight for people's rights and their access to information. I know what it's
15
right
seconds.
for our community members to not have an advocate for them. And I want to say those are the values they instilled in me. They instilled in me to fight hard and to also understand that not everyone has the information they need in order to advocate for themselves. And
Time.
I very much want to be that person all the time.
Beautiful. Thank you, Stephanie. And to all of you, Cynthia, Eduardo, Misty, Jackson, and Stephanie, we are fortunate to have you in our community. You're valuable people, and you come from really wonderful families. And thank you for sharing that piece of your lives. Back to you. Thank you.
All right.
Malika.
Thank you, Dan. That was a great question. Gave us a little more insight into the candidates and their background. I'm going to ask the next question and then turn it over to Devon. As many of us know, the city is being sued over Foia information being withheld. As we know, the city has been under question for doing things like that, withholding information. And we have a right to that information. So you have two residents who are actually running for seats in Evanston right now, Mary Rosinski and Claire Kelly. They know their rights, and so now they're suing. So we know the city clerk's office has been a very intense office. Devon Reed, the current city clerk, has constantly had to fight to even do his job because he knows what the rights of the people are, and he was constantly being blocked from pretty much doing his job for the people of Evanston. So my question to you all is, it's a tough job. It's a tough job because you're up against a few people at the city who are corrupt and want to withhold information. And so oftentimes the people that they want in that position of city clerk, they want a yes man. And Devon Clark was not a yes man, clearly was not a yes man. So the ones that they tend to push and want in the positions, they know they can get them to do whatever they want. And that tends to be against the people. Not saying everyone at the city is that way, but we know that there are quite a few of them at the city who operate in this way. I'm going to direct this question to Stephanie. Stephanie, give us one example. You said that you have fought. Describe one time when you have fought, not as an organization, a collaboration with others, but you, as Stephanie Mendoza, gone up against corruption, where we would feel like you're not going to be a yes person because you have a lot of endorsements. We want to know, are you a yes person? And give us an example of when you have fought tooth and nail like a Devon Reed, because that man's got skin thicker than I don't know what.
Malika, well, not through any of my work, but I've always had to fight. I'm the daughter of 2 immigrant parents. My whole life has been fighting for their rights, for my family's rights, for their rights to be in this country without being bothered. I've actually, as a young child, was traveling throughout the South with my parents, fighting immigration officers to make sure that our community members that were illegally detained by immigration were released from detention centers.
Where did you do that?
And so I used to live in a very rural community where people's rights were very much ran over often. So my parents and we used to travel throughout like Louisiana, Mississippi, and there was a detention center too near our community. And we used to go, we used to go together. I used to translate for them. And go to these like different detention centers and bail people out. And even as a young child, like my job was always to help my parents advocate for people in our community, you know, our classmates where their parents were being deported. And I've also fought, you know, to make sure that our city understands that we have all kinds of community members in our city.
60 seconds.
People in our community who many times have lived in the shadows here in Evanston were not being helped or provided COVID relief. And it was a collaboration. I'm not going to say it wasn't, but it was a collaboration between our city, you know, our alderperson, Cicely Flemings, and the organization I work for. And I'm very proud of that work and bringing attention to some of the issues that we have in our community. And, you know, like I said, accountability is important. And, you know, when our city starts to recognize that they are actively ignoring people who live in our community and start alleviating some of those issues, I'm like, we're only building together, we're building a better community, you know, but I have been fighting all of my life. You know, I was a young mother.
15
I finished
seconds.
school and have been fighting all of my life. So despite my endorsements, I was endorsed by IVI-IPO, who fights every single day for government transparency and accountability to eliminate some of these within our governments and municipalities.
Okay. I guess I was looking more for you describing what does it look like for Stephanie Mendoza to fight? I mean, just saying that you advocate, all of us advocate for something, but Devon Reed had to go in and fight up against corruption. So we want to know if you have that in you. Misty?
You know, of course I have it in me. You know, I'm describing to you actively what I've been doing, and you may look at it as advocacy, but it's not advocacy. It's not just advocacy. You also have to be willing to have a voice to speak up for people that don't have a voice, that don't feel like they have a voice. Give them a space and a voice to be able to talk about their concerns. And at the end of the day, the best, you know, if you look up the definition for advocacy, advocacy is the best word to describe speaking up
15
when others
seconds.
feel like they don't have a voice. So, you know, I honestly don't know what answer you're looking for. And, you know, if it's not enough, I'm sorry, but, you know, I am an advocate, and being an advocate means you have to have a strong voice for others, especially in spaces where they don't feel like they have a voice.
Time on the rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. I asked because I haven't heard your voice in the community. So I'm just wondering what kind of a fighter are you? Because clearly you have to go up against corruption at the city for the people. And I haven't heard your voice, but that's not to say that you haven't had one, but I haven't heard your voice. Misty Wittenberg?
Yeah, so I could speak a little bit to Stephanie's voice because she worked with me a bit with our esteemed Dr. Gilo Kwesi-Logan. So I know she has some fight in her too. I don't always know where I know she's active in groups, I should say. And I appreciated your story of your personal fight as well. I think my fights about you know, quote unquote fights with the city, a lot of people see me scolding at council meetings. That's what's recorded. There's a lot that goes into it before that. We we are working with the city leaders. We have lots of meetings. Oh, I'm getting lots of texts from people. We have a lot of people who are going in and meeting with leaders, and I was one of those people. Who fought with getting information for Robert Crown. I was part of that force, and the reason they called it Citizens for Responsible Robert Crown is because we were villainized by some of the council members
60
for
seconds.
questioning. Thank you, questioning how they were spending money, and everyone was, or not everyone, but there were 4 council members in particular who were marginalizing us as not wanting Crown, even though, at least for me, that was the opposite. But I did not want to see the proposed cuts for social services going through. I thought that was incredibly irresponsible. And I just also thought that people needed to know that information, and I Foia'd a lot. The fight of that was to keep standing there knowing that you were going to be one time lumped in as active shooters because we were so quote unquote passionate. You keep getting up there, you keep speaking truth, and that is what I have done my whole life, and that's what I will keep doing in the clerk's office.
Thank you.
Thank you, Misty. Eduardo Gomez, Deputy City Clerk. Eduardo Gomez.
Yes. So thank you, Malika, for the question. And thank you, Stephanie, for sharing that story. That's something that I've heard several times, and we appreciate the sort of work that you do on that. And for me, in my context, you know, I've been someone who has had to fight in many occasions growing up, both for myself and for my siblings. I had to fight in school to make sure that I was placed in classes that I knew I was academically fit for. I had to fight against my brother's school to ensure that he was receiving the proper care and treatment that a person with disability requires. And that sort of spirit is something that I carry with me. And hopefully as a city clerk, I want to give that sort of spirit to our residents. I want to make sure that they are proactive and vocal and attending our ward meetings and city council meetings, reaching out to their alder people and holding them accountable for the decisions that they make and making sure that they stick true to their words. It's also about making sure that we continue to advocate for some of the stuff Clerk Reed was passionate about, which is Foia, making sure that people are able to adequately request the information that they're seeking and that they are provided that information. And it's also being that liaison to them in that next step if their information is denied improperly, that they know that that is not the end of the line, that they have other means to seek the information as well. And ultimately, I want to continue that work that was laid by Clerk Reed and ensure that our residents are empowered and feel like they're empowered and also have that voice that will be that seeker of truth on their behalf.
Okay, thank you, Eduardo. Okay, Cynthia Beebe.
So when I retired, I wrote a book, a memoir that came out about a year ago, and it's called Boots in the Ashes, Busting Bombers, Arsonists, and Outlaws as a trailblazing female ATF agent. So I was one of the first female federal agents in the country. So I can assure you I have fought many a battle. And I was the first woman to do a number of things. And a lot of that was just because, again, of my age and when I came through the system. So I was the first woman to ever be top gun at the ATF Academy, for example. Well, fortunately for me, that went well because the guys who were expected to win thought it was great that I won. But I can tell you that if it could have been a very uncomfortable situation. And I was the first woman to go to Quantico out of my field office, and I took flack all along the way. And a lot of people would quit. In fact, some did quit. But I always knew when I was right. Particularly, I would say it came more into play when I was fighting over a case, over a
60
suspect.
seconds.
And if I was right, I got into some serious battles, but I was annoyingly always right, and which irritated some people to no end. But it's not, it was a process in proving that I was right, in proving the evidence and so on. So it comes down to professional experience, knowing how to make the system work, knowing how to get things done, helping people to get what they need. When I would have, victims asking me about a case and working to see that it was solved correctly. The same thing with the city of Evanston. If people need information, I'll get
30
it to them.
seconds.
Same thing with a Foia request. It's really, the answers might not be necessarily black and white, but the system is pretty clear. You can persist and persist and persist. There are many avenues to appeal, and you can refile and refile. So I believe in the system. I believe in making the system work. And I'm very effective at knowing the law, knowing how the law works, knowing how to make the law work for you. And that's what I would do. I would
Right.
make the law work for our citizens.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. Jackson?
So I thankfully never been personally up against the level of corrupt political influence that Clerk Reed has faced, but I feel like if my organizer training through Reclaim Evanston and the People's Lobbyist taught me anything, it's how to fight. And this is going to be another story that has a little bit of collaboration involved, because I don't think anyone long-term can stand against that kind of political corruption without support, without the community. Many of you might remember the period of 2 years during Governor Bruce Browner's term where our state just had no budget at all. And through my work with the People's Lobby, I took part in the fight to not just a budget, but a fair budget. We did the steps of going down to Springfield, talking to legislators, telling them what our communities, our organizations needed. I took deliberate civil disobedience arrests 2 times during that campaign, and I'm very proud of getting the opportunity to do that. And near the end of that fight, we did the march to Springfield from Chicago, where I led a group that did civil disobedience in the state capitol, because the state capitol, just like the Evanston Civic Center, doesn't belong to any of the elected officials there. That is a public building, that is our space. And if
60
the
seconds.
officials involved aren't doing what they need to be doing for their constituents, then the community needs to be able to come together and make their voices heard en masse. And though the methods might be different, that is the exact same energy I would want to bring into any fights I would need to be a part of as the Evanston City Clerk. I don't think we'd be able to do this without community. And I keep hammering away at this. I would want to, if I'm working to get the ordinance and resolution writing process to be more accessible before the city council has to vote on them, and I'm hitting a roadblock, I would want to bring that out to Evanston residents, to the constituents, say, this is what I'm trying to do, this is what you deserve, and this is why it's not happening. So we need to come together as a community and tell those in power what needs to be done. And that's how I would approach it.
Okay. Thank you, Jackson. Okay, I think I got everyone. City Clerk Reed?
Yes. Happy to go through. I know we're at about 8:20 now. So if I have time for a couple of questions, I'd love to get through that. Okay, I have a couple of quick fire questions. You may say pass if you do not have an answer for it, to give us time. So I'll give you 1 minute to answer. We'll start on this one with Eduardo, Deputy Clerk Gomez. Dan, first I want to say, Dan, thank you for asking the question that you asked earlier, and Malika, thank you for asking your question, because it's important to understand what motivates us to tackle these issues. But it's also important to have the skill set and toolkit ready to take on the job. And we'll get into this a bit later, but some folks have described the clerk's office as mostly administrative role. Some folks have a different opinion that it's a mix of administrative and policymaking. We'll start with the administrative part. And we know that one of the big responsibilities of the clerk, and one of the things that I have brought to the table, is a understanding of council rules and helping to enforce those council rules because it's important for having a thoughtful, robust discussion. So I'll ask, I'll go through, starting with Eduardo. Can you name one council rule and its significance for public participation and for thoughtful debate?
I'll pass on that one.
Cynthia.
Yeah, I have to say, I better pass. I don't have a good answer for you, sorry.
Okay, Misty?
Yeah, so I think special orders of business, when they're brought forward for action on the first time, they stifle deliberation. They also harm the public's understanding of participating. When an item is brought for introduction, that a lot of times makes people alert. We have a week or two to gather information, and then we can come back with really thoughtful answers. And that's stymied when we bring something for action. Council members themselves often aren't informed.
Thank you. Jackson?
I couldn't give you the number, but I do think the 45-minute hard time limit for public comments is something that's stated in council rules, and I don't like the lack of flexibility that gives to actually hear all of the public has to say on days when there might be a very full agenda with a lot of controversial issues.
Certainly, thank you. And then Stephanie.
I'm sorry, I didn't know if we were supposed to add numbers, but those are council rules 18.11 and 12 that I mentioned.
Even better, Misty. Stephanie?
I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I do know that at least the calling of emergency meetings, it's something that I have, oh my gosh, which has more to do with OMA, but that just is something that we really need to see how we use that, especially when we talk about, government transparency and when we talk about our ability to, collaborate with our city. So I'm glad I made Misty laugh.
Thank you, thank you. So I'll start with you, Stephanie, here then. Another, part of the administrative role is that the clerk helps folks with Foia. And we know that sometimes there's certain exemptions that are overused, not just by the city of Evanston, but by public bodies overall. Can you name one commonly overused Foia exemption and how you might work with the city to make sure it's not overutilized? And free to pass and give time to other folks.
Well, I can't think of a specific exemption, but I do know that the difference between private and public information is something that is cited many times. I think I'm working with, Misty mentioned our PAC officers and making sure our FOIA officers in the city understand what the difference is between the private and public information and what people are kind of entitled to receive because FOIA is there to not, keep information from being disclosed, but mostly make sure information is actively being disclosed. So understanding the difference between those two is very important.
Thank you, thank you. Jackson, can you name one commonly overused Foia exemption?
If I remember correctly, the overly burdensome request exemption might be one of the most frequent ones to appear in PAC opinions. And I feel like there's a twofold way around that of like really setting the ground rules with Evanston city staff of really what this is and what searching needs to be done before that can be invoked. And then also making it as easy as possible for residents to know what sort of criteria they need to give to narrow the request as much as they can on the requesting end as well.
Thank you, thank you. Miss Cynthia, Miss Beebe, can you name one commonly overused FOIA exemption and how you might help residents overcome that?
I can't articulate it, the words perfectly. I would basically echo what Stephanie said, which is because I'm not an expert on exactly how what the FOIAs are that have been filed in Evanston, but it is crucial that people do understand the difference between personal information and public information, and then your right, anyone's right to have that information. So I won't take any more of your time, but that would be crucial.
And then did I ask Misty already? Misty, can you name one commonly overused FOIA exemption?
Well, the one that was cited in the Robert Crown suit is preliminary drafts and deliberations, and an easy way to not overuse that exemption is if it's cited by the head of a public body, then it's no longer exempt. So that's what's critical there. If I'm allowed, the other one that is so often overused is attorney-client privilege. And I see that often used for things like police body camera footage, where there are very strict rules, even just applying how attorneys handle municipal corporations when they represent them. It's the acting constituents, but they overall are there to represent their corporation's duties to the public. And those are often overused.
Yes, thank you. And Deputy Clerk Gomez, as our chief is on the panel, our chief FOIA expert here, can you name one commonly overused FOIA exemption and how you will, as clerk, and maybe how you have as a staff member, help folks overcome that?
I'll have to pass on that one. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
I mean, I see them all, but Jackson took my thunder, but I will elaborate on that a little bit further. Unduly burdensome. I've seen that played out heavily when it comes to communications. I think that in many times it's because of threads that have the same sort of attachments given in that communication line. So I think we need to find a better filtering system to ensure that we are not reproducing threads multiple times. And that starts with working with our IT department to see if there's a system in place that we can incorporate to ensure that we are not overly using that sort of excuse to avoid producing more records than I think
30
the
seconds.
public deserves. And I think, to me, I've seen that constantly every single day as a FOIA officer. I think that would be the first one I would like to tackle.
Okay, thank you. And then do I have time for two more quick questions, Malika? Okay. Can I, we'll start with Cynthia, since you are a federal agent. And we know that there are many issues that have been highlighted in policing. Have you ever observed a superior or a colleague violate a law? And what did you do in that situation? And if you didn't do what you wish you had have done, what do you wish you would have done?
The short answer is no. I have never seen, I never saw an agent or a cop hit somebody over the head or anything like that. But again, I was a federal agent. I wasn't a street cop, and those are very different jobs. And I have to say, I think a uniformed police officer's job is actually in many, many ways significantly more difficult than a federal agent. What we do, we walk around and look like accountants.
If I can jump in, I don't necessarily, and I'm sorry, I might have prefaced that incorrectly. I just want to, anything that you've observed, doesn't have to be a colleague hitting someone over the head, breaking, any law or any procedure, and what did you do in that situation when you maybe witnessed someone break a law or procedure, whether it was?
Well, those are quite different things, laws and procedures. I never saw anyone blatantly break the law. No, that never happened in my personally. Procedure, I suppose it would just depend on I mean, I worked for the federal government for almost 30 years. Did some guys leave work early some days and not clock it in? Sure. I mean, or did someone take the Post-it notes home? Yeah. But it just depended on, I never got into a big altercation with people, but I have to say, if there was something I was concerned about, I would go to that individual and talk to that individual about it directly. Generally speaking, unless something is truly egregious. And I have to say there were a couple of egregious things, but they were more interpersonal, interpolitical things than what you're talking about. But I would go to a supervisor or even go over a supervisor's head when I had to. So I did take action. When it was clearly necessary, I absolutely took action.
Thank you, thank you. Stephanie, I mean, I know you haven't necessarily worked in government, but can you think of a situation where you've observed a superior violate a law or a company policy? And what have you done in that instance, and what do you wish you had done?
I can't think of any, to be honest with you, any situation where I've seen someone violate a law. Like, I do know that just through my work as a political organizer, having employees under me, like There's many union contracts that we've had to kind of help even myself understand how to navigate. And I always had made sure I had someone there who was highly knowledgeable about union contracts, help me navigate those contracts, because they're very, very extensive and very important to follow. But I can't like tell you
30 seconds.
anything, but you know, anytime there ever had been a situation, even as my own work, where something was getting a little close to being violated, maybe I always made sure that I was ahead of the game and understood how to navigate these very difficult contracts.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to switch the question now. So not everyone's going to get asked all of my questions. So the city has been involved in a number of Foia lawsuits, as Malika mentioned earlier. Can you pick one and describe its significance and where the city maybe made a misstep that led to either the lawsuit, Foia lawsuit, or a PAC opinion? So I'll ask that next to Jackson.
I won't have a ton of detail on this, because the one that's at the top of my mind right now is the lawsuit that Claire, Kelly, and Mary Brzezinski brought. And
Sure.
If I'm remembering that correctly, that's still related to some records related to Robert Crown that the city has not been releasing. And that the significance there is that's a part, like Robert Crown is one of the biggest expenditures that the city's been making, and understanding what the logic is going into it, and specifically where that money's going, is a key part of the public being able to have any meaningful oversight over that process. And I don't think that's something that needed to be accomplished by a lawsuit.
30 seconds.
Get the information released. That information should, the information of where the money's coming from and where it's going should be available.
Certainly, thank you. Misty, either one of those questions, but particularly, I guess the second one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the second one, as we know, Foia, OMA, they apply to public bodies. The city actually sued me for violating Foia, which I thought was a poor use of taxpayer money, and it regarded a Foia request I sent for a very limited number of records, and the city in turn sent me their entire human resources log since 2015, which is some of the reason why I have all of this information, and they left it unredactable. So I let them know soon after I realized that was the situation. And I also, because it was part of public proceedings, which, to be transparent, also involved Clerk Reed. But
30 seconds.
Thank you. I let them know. I also offered to show them how it was done so that they would know how to protect it, and they weren't interested in that. So they've since dismissed that suit, but that was to me a slap First Amendment suit, because I spoke up about it and because I petitioned for grievances.
Thank you. And then Eduardo, say you can pick from either one of those two questions there. The city has been involved in a number of Foia lawsuits, or have you witnessed Superior violate the law, and what do you wish you had done, and what did you do?
So either one, you said?
Yep.
Okay, so I mean, in those sort of instances, when I believe that there's wrongdoing, it's best practice to go to the appropriate authority and have them handle whatever situation I've been experiencing. And it's also important to make sure that what I like to do is make sure people document the chain of events, so that way, you know, you're able to better reflect or remember how things transpired, so there's no discrepancies. And I usually leave it up to higher power to make the determination on whatever outcome, or whatever outcome they think it's applicable to, whatever violations they think were applied in that instance.
Thank you. And then Malika, you let me know where we are. If not, if I have one more, then I have one more. If not, then we can move on to the audience questions.
Yes. get one more in there.
Okay. So as we talked about up at the top, the clerk's office is, sometimes thought of as an administrative office. Some folks think of it as policy. Some folks think of it hybrid. If I can start with just getting your answer of where you think, where on the spectrum of clerk's offices do you think you'd like your clerk's office to fall if you are elected? So it's either on the spectrum, very far in the administrative role, very far in the policy setting role, or somewhere in the middle. Deputy, and then I have a follow-up very quick. So tell me where you want to be, and then tell me, then I have a follow-up for that.
Sure. So everything's about balance. So to me, I feel like a good balance between the both is healthy for our community and for the office.
Okay, and so you have served as deputy city clerk for nearly 4 years now. So can you name an initiative toward that policy realm that you have brought forward and accomplished? And if you haven't accomplished it, then something that you've attempted.
Well, in my capacity, I haven't really had the pleasure of advocating for a policy, but what I do want to see is continue on the work that you started with Ruth Simmons, and in regards to reparations, continue that dialogue, that discussion, and bring that even farther than we already have. I think it's a topic that everyone is passionate about, and I would love to get the opportunity to work on that issue myself, if given the opportunity as city clerk.
Thank you. Misty, same first question. Where do you think the office falls on the spectrum?
Well, I disagree with the premise of your question, because I don't believe the clerk's office is administrative. I believe it's executive powers, which administrative powers fall into executive, but they are constrained by other things. So, but as far as that works, and I hate to disagree with you ever, obviously, but that's not true. I disagree with you all the time. But
Yeah.
I would say policy. I don't directly affect city policy as in ordinances and resolutions, except for the fact that I want to be ensuring I'm providing information to the public and to council members so that they're making those decisions with all of the information, and that the public has it to speak their mind and to hold the officials accountable.
Thank you, Misty. Miss Cynthia Beebe, Miss Beebe.
I guess I would like
First,
to.
yeah, just the first chunk of it is where do you think it, more administrative or executive, as Misty said, a middle, somewhere in the middle, or policy oriented?
Somewhere in the middle.
Okay. And then, okay, then yeah, describe what you mean by that then.
Well, I think you have to have the office functioning well. I think that's a given. You have to have the administrative obligations well organized, well planned, and carried out as a matter of routine. Once you have that down to a science, so to speak, then you'll have more energy and more time to focus on the policy. Not that I would ever forget the policy, but I would absolutely focus on things like elections and education of young voters. I really do think that's a crucial issue for our city moving forward, and other policy issues as well. But you do have to get the administrative section up and running smoothly, have everything well organized, and then you're free to spend more time on policy.
Thank you. So I'm going to switch the question for the last two folks because we're getting similar answers here. And I suppose the other two candidates are going to say something similar. So we know that the clerk handles Foia, is a local election official, has these executive responsibility with handling records. Name one duty of the clerk's office that we have not discussed yet this evening, and describe what you might, how you might approach handling that duty. Jackson, sorry.
So you've mentioned it, but I feel like we haven't discussed as the candidates really the custodian of like city records and city ordinance part of it. And I think that duty has to that duty, as well as the goal of making the legislative writing process and the legislative process as a whole more accessible, those two need to go together. And I feel like one is a reasonable logical extension of the other. I would want to ensure that we're maintaining and continuing the work that you've done for digitizing all past ordinances and add like another piece of that, essentially, of potential future ordinances that might be
30 seconds.
a way for citizens to really be able to access and consider those before making their voices heard to the city.
Thank you. And with your last 30 seconds, I want to follow up. You are in law school. I think you're year 2?
Year 2, yes.
Year 2. So you're almost done there. What do you, and you've done some work with EVI, and so you've done some research on the clerk's office. What do you think it means to be the custodian of records? Do you think that means that the clerk has the authority to set maybe the disposition of certain records held by other officers, or not? Meaning, you know, yeah, go ahead.
I think it might have to be a little bit of a case-by-case analysis, because there's a mess of various state statutes that even though Evanston is a home rule municipality with more flexibility than some other municipalities would, there are some state statutes that would still determine what we can and can't do. But I think it absolutely means the clerk would have to have a role in that process of working with various other Evanston government departments to figure out where things are and where they need to be.
Thank you. And then finally, Stephanie, same question. We know the clerk's the Foia officer. We know the clerk's the local election official and handles, records, the custodian of records. Can you name one responsibility of the clerk's office that we have not yet discussed tonight, and why it is important, what you plan to do differently with that, or what you plan to do with that authority? And this is a statutory or authority, a duty granted by either state law or city code.
Yeah, so, well, Jackson, you stole like what I wanted to say, what I wanted to say. So, but really, one of the things that, if I can kind of build a little bit on what Jackson said.
If I can ask you to pick something different.
Okay, I pick something different. I do know that the clerk's office is the clerk is the kind of keeper of the seal of the city. I know bonds come through our office, through the office. I always say our office because I feel like I'm there, but
it is the people's office, so it's our office.
The people's office. Yeah. So, I know you've always been a huge advocate for making sure that we can meet our bond responsibilities. So making sure we keep a close eye on that. And I know you've talked about this a lot. So I really do want to make sure that I am, actively looking at those bonds that come in through our office. Another thing we did not discuss, and I know it goes back to being an election official, but voter registration. I think it's very important, especially because we're here, as candidates trying to run for office. This is something that it should be at the forefront of our office as well, making sure that we're out in the community, registering people to vote, getting people involved, and that our voter registration numbers are going up, and people are we know more and more people are participating, and also that we're registering more and more people in our city. So that's another one. And I can't see Devon anymore.
Devon?
I think the signal is,
Okay.
he was wait for him.
Okay. Well, we will. Okay. Thank you for that. Clerk Reed had some great questions there. I think we learned quite a bit where you all stand, what you know, what you don't know, what you got in you, what you don't got in you. Let's get one question from a resident. We probably have time for one more question. Aaron Foster, if you want to unmute and pick 2 of the candidates to ask a question.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Give me a thumbs up if you can hear.
We can hear
All
you.
right, well, we've discussed a lot of the stuff that I really wanted to talk about. It's awesome. Everybody gets kudos. I'd like to direct this question to Eduardo Gomez. You are currently the deputy clerk, and I would like to hear your answer as to why you're not currently on the ballot and running as a write-in. That would be my question. You got to
Sorry, I thought I was
unmute.
on mute. Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, so thank you for the question, Aaron. And so to me, you know, I did see a lot of fruitful candidates coming about when petitioning started out. And, you know, afterwards, I was encouraged by family, by residents, and those who had seen me do the work of the city clerk to give it a chance, an opportunity, because they wanted to see what I stood for. They wanted to see what I saw as the vision for that office. And so that ultimately was the reason why I decided to run as a write-in candidate, because I felt like I owed it to myself and to the residents to at least give it a try and have them learn more about me and who I am as a person and where I
30
stand
seconds.
in many of these issues. And so that, again, is why I ran as a write-in candidate, because of the encouragement I received from many in the community. But thank you for the question.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for the answer. My next question, if you guys can still hear me, is going to be directed at candidate Baby. So if you could unmute, start the unmute process. At this point, we've heard a lot about your past career as a member of the federal law enforcement agencies. Our certain situation here in Evanston has been that the authorities, the perceived authorities, have been misusing their office. Generally, a federal agent will go with whatever her or his authorities tell them, and our clerk has been one that has bucked the system. Evanstonians allow and want a clerk who would be willing to protect us through his office. Where do you stand on that fact that we need someone who will not act accordingly based on what the mayor and his cronies might want to happen?
You broke up there a little bit,
That's
but
the question.
okay, yeah. Like I said, you broke up a little bit, but I think I understand that you're asking, how would I stand up for all of Evanston, all Evanston citizens, and not
Yes,
just be a yes woman to the mayor?
that's correct.
Okay, and that's a great question, and it comes down to who I am as a person. I could be very irritating at times to my bosses when I was an ATF agent, because I didn't always take, you know, their word for anything. And I understand that there are some very, very serious issues right now, not just in Evanston, but in our whole country, that have to be addressed. And I know that there are deep concerns, frankly, in the Black community, in the brown community. I understand that there's a huge issue of racial injustice. There's big concerns over the police. But I do believe that the best way to try to improve things for everyone is to do our best to work together. And by that, I don't mean all just join hands and sing, you know, nice songs together, but to find out in concrete ways how the mayor's office, for example, can help people who feel that the police have treated them unjustly, or how can the council help people who feel that the police have treated them unjustly. And
15 seconds.
And for that matter, how can the police help? I think we have to communicate with each other. I think we have to try to communicate with each other clearly, and nothing will help more than that. Listen to each other and try to help each other and build some trust. I think that's crucial. And I do think we can do it, by the way. I think Evanston, we can do that.
I think I'd like to.
Well, thank you for your answer.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I would like to hear the rest of the candidates answer that question.
Awesome.
Who would like to jump on it?
I'm happy to jump on it.
Okay.
Mr. Foster, could you repeat the last part? It was about if I will be a yes man or woman to authority or protect the people. Is that correct?
The core of my question, because it was pushed towards a federal agent, was would she just go along with the authorities because that's what her past was? My question, I guess, to the general population would be, are you going to fall in line with what has been happening, or are you going to help us correct what we need to be corrected, which is the damage that was done to the office
I love this
while
question.
we were
Sorry.
dealing with the corruption?
Yeah, so I want to be clear that a lot of the damage that happened with our FOIA office was because of HR practices that are exclusively applied to African-American officials, all of whom are then removed from office for allegedly creating an unhealthy work environment. And that includes Kevin Brown, includes Suzette Robinson. There's a lot of victims. We lost a lot of good people. My point of view in being in the office is that we have a lot of the public who is volunteering to be oversight, and we should be taking advantage of that. And that is the purpose of FOIA. One of the many purposes is to monitor government and making sure it's working in the public interest. So we have a large group of people, thank you, who are paying attention to police activities, which is very important. That is a group of people that we have given deadly weapons to. Making it easier for them to monitor, to use their volunteering for that is to, and I can't take credit, the clerk brought this up, complaints that are flagged for use of force and arrests or complaints, redacting information about victims, redacting information about the witnesses, but making sure that we have those demographics. That same with what we were talking about with budget transparency and Robert Brown, making sure there are a lot of people willing to do that oversight for us. We just have to give them the information. If they don't know it exists, make sure that they know it exists. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Misty. Stephanie?
Sorry, Aaron, could you repeat the question again?
Yes, Stephanie, it is my pleasure to reiterate the question for you. Especially because you've been sanctioned by the current administration so strongly, if not on paper, but behind doors. The question would be, will you fall in line with what they want, which seems to be corruption? I can't make the direct call that they are corrupt, but the implication has been that they are corrupt. Will you fall in line, especially because they have endorsed you?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's the question.
No one from the city has actually endorsed me, just that works for the city, by the way. So I don't know where you're getting your information from, but that is definitely not true. And I'm like actually the only person I've been able to count on, at least to further my knowledge and anything that I know, is Clerk Reed. And just so you will know and understand that. So, you know, I am very much an advocate, you know, and I want to make sure that everything I do in the office benefits our community members. I want to make sure the office and the city is working for our community. Like I said before, you know,
30 seconds.
Where even myself, and as an Evanston resident, a young mother, when I first moved here, wondered if I could or could not stay in Evanston. I had on my own had to learn how to navigate our city government and learn to work with our city through my extensive work with the nonprofit community. So I will very much always be, you know, a voice for the people.
15 seconds.
Always first getting opinions from our community members before any decisions are made, at least that I have the power to make.
Well, I apologize for my misinformation. And I guess the next person would be Jackson. Thank you. The same question.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And the short answer is no, I would not go along with the corrupting influences in city council. And the reason why I feel confident saying that is in a word, co-governance. And I really want to give Misty credit for bringing this up earlier, because what it really does come down to is making a concerted effort to get the community involved and to get people's input and hopes for what the office will entail at the very beginning of the process, even before getting into office. And I think that's something that not only the clerk needs to do, but every single elected official up there would need to do, because we aren't
30 seconds.
accountable to the other people on that dais. Every single person we elect is accountable to you, accountable to the people that put them in office. And I think the only good way to avoid the corrupting influences of City Hall is by understanding that fact and bringing the community in. And that's something that I never hope to lose in my approach to elected office.
Thank you. Thank you, Aaron, for those questions. Thank you to the candidates. We are coming to a close right now. I want to thank everyone so much for your time this evening and joining Evanston Live TV for the City Clerk Forum. I think we've learned quite a bit. I want to give a special thank you to Terrence Weaver. You still with us? Our sponsor?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
Yes, I am. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, thank you all for, being a part of this. I mean, to sponsor the event is one thing. I mean, you guys have made a commitment to public service. So sponsoring is minute when it comes down to having viable candidates that, really represent what the city needs, and to move forward and think forward about what the city needs. So thank you guys for doing it. Malika, thank you for always having your leadership role of pulling the right people together. And from a CNW perspective, we're just grateful. We do know that there's one point that we wanted to make, is that if everybody moves forward, understanding that we're in a new age, we're collaborating with different people, make a big difference. And whenever you can do something collectively that hasn't been done before, it's going to be very challenging, but it's also going to be very rewarding. And, collectively, we can reach more people than any of us can reach individually. And we've seen that with the work that we've done with the food insecurity effort. And as Stephanie mentioned, Stephanie is part of the team that comes out and helps with that. So Stephanie, kudos. I got to thank you publicly on that, because I always thank you privately. But I'm gonna tell you, we've been able to see a change for the right reasons, to provide something to those that are in need. And it's unconditional. And we don't ask for any information. We just do what needs to be done. And this pandemic has put us in that place. And we don't know what the city is going to need to do as you guys move forward, right? Because business as usual, I don't think that's going to be true for any entity. So good luck with whatever you do moving forward.
Thank you so much, CNW. Thank you again for sponsoring tonight. Thank you for your service in the community. Thank you so much. We'll go to Dan Coyne. Is Dan still with us?
Yes, I just want to say thanks to all the candidates. I just feel very fortunate to have you guys as neighbors, and I feel we're in good hands having all of you shape this campaign. And just remind the audience that the voting really is next Tuesday, the 23rd. So we want everybody to get down to the Civic Center and please vote for your candidate for citywide and for your ward.
Okay. Thank you, Dan, and please get better. Thank you for joining us even after being hit by a car. You were determined to be here. Thank you so much. Okay, and City Clerk Reed.
Yes, thank you for having us. I just want to close on a bit of a, well, one, to echo what Dan said, early voting is going on. I believe we had fewer than 10 people vote today. Of course, look outside, don't blame folks. But we've been seeing a very low voter turnout during early voting. So please get out and vote, whenever you can. Early voting is fairly safe. There's not a line. But the positive light that I want to close on, I don't know how positive is, but it certainly is more positive than some of what we've been hearing tonight. And I do want to say that I don't want us to confuse I remember listening to NPR a while ago, and I believe it was speaking then was the former chair of the European Union, right? Politics out of the, crazy politics, dealing with various nations. And he said the biggest issue there, and I think this is true in Evanston, is not corruption, but ego. And so I think it should give us some heart to think that, that folks aren't necessarily intentionally being corrupt or trying to hide stuff. They just have egos that may be super inflated and think that they're legitimately doing good in their eyes with their potentially flawed lens. And so I think it's good if we really call those neighbors in and, not immediately deem them corrupt. If they keep on doing it and we keep calling them out and telling them that they're doing something wrong and they keep doing it, corrupt. But, first time, let's give them the benefit of the doubt and hope that it's just ego and, misplaced, desire to do good. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your time tonight, City Clerk. You asked some great questions, and City Clerk Reed is running for 8th Ward Alderman as well. He's moving on, wants to play a different hand in helping the community. So thank you so much for your time tonight, Clerk Reed. And to our candidates, thank you so much for your time, your energy, your vision, and all of the hard work getting out there in this brutal weather and trying to connect and engage with the community. I respect each and every one of you for what you're doing, that you want to go out there for the people. And I can't do anything but just love you and thank you for wanting to take on this position. And I know how hard it is. It's been an intense race in some crazy times right now. So thank you. So I want to give each of you just 30 seconds to send out your last message to the people and how they can contact you for further questions and elaborations on things that we've talked about. Let's start with Stephanie.
Hi, thank you everyone for attending. And I also want to, reiterate what Devon said. Early voting has started. The 18th is the last day to request your mail-in ballot. And yeah, we only had 11 voters today and have only had about 4,500 mail-in ballots requested. So request your mail-in ballot and get out to vote. I want to say, when you go to vote, you'll see that I'm the only one on the ballot. And you'll see that I'm the only one on the ballot because very early on, I knew this was
15 seconds.
And I knew I wanted to serve our community, and I did everything in my power to get out into the community and collect signatures to be on the ballot. So you could see my name and learn more about me. My name on the ballot is a symbol of my ability to reach out to the community, my commitment to the clerk's office, my commitment to reaching out to you as a candidate. I'm making sure that you agree with me being on the ballot. And I don't take that lightly. I did it in the middle of a pandemic with 3 children. Thank you for your time, and I hope I can count on your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you. We'll go to Eduardo.
Yes, so thank you, Malika. Thank you, Clerk Reed. Thank you, Mr. Coyne, and thank you, Mr. Weaver. And thanks to all the candidates for being here. We talked about before, I'm the current Deputy City Clerk for the City of Evanston, and I've had the most hands-on experience in doing the role of the office. So I know what it entails and what it could potentially do for our community. And so I want to continue to be given that opportunity to show the community how I can further expand on the work that we've done already. And if any of you have any questions and want to reach out to me, you can email me directly at eduardo@gomezforclerk.com. And I'd be more than happy to talk to all of you and answer any of your questions to ensure that you are confident when writing my name
15 seconds.
on the ballot during the primary elections. So thank you all very much. Remember, like Stephanie said, you can still request a mail-in ballot, and early voting is still happening at the Civic Center. And I hope everyone stays safe while voting. And I thank you all for giving us this platform.
Okay. Thank you, Eduardo. Thank you, Deputy City Clerk Eduardo Gomez. Thank you. And let's go to Cynthia Beebe.
I would also like to say thank you to Ms. Gardner and Mr. Coyne and Clerk Reed and Mr. Weaver again, and to the candidates. As other people have noted, we are in the early voting. You still can request a mail-in ballot up until the 18th. But as to myself, I'd just like to emphasize that I have almost 30 years of professional experience. I know how to run large operations. I think I could lead the city clerk's office effectively. I could lead it with the city council and the mayor, but also lead it for the citizens of Evanston. I'm not afraid of people. I'm not afraid of new ideas. I would look forward to meeting with people and to hearing what they have to say. I hope I don't break any rules, but my name's a little tricky to spell. So that's how you spell my name. And that's my
15
website,
seconds.
bbforclerk.com. And you can also email me at cynthiabb@mac.com, but you can reach me through my website. And I have other information available on the internet. You can reach me anytime you want.
Hi.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia Beebe.
Thank you.
I like that. Okay, Jackson Poller.
Yes, thank you again to everybody who was involved in tonight. This was a fantastic event. I want to just say that I think the next city clerk needs to be able to do three things, more than three things, but three things. The next clerk needs to be able to open all public processes, including the legislative drafting process, to public scrutiny, because right now it's not open. The next clerk needs to give more ways for citizens to make their voices heard, because right now public comment isn't necessarily accessible to everybody. And the next city clerk needs to encourage more first-time candidates to vote, because I think Evanstonians are sick and tired of status quo politics. Now, if you choose to write my name in, Jackson Poller, and I'm elected, those three things are exactly what I'm going to do.
15
if I'm not
seconds.
elected, I'm going to work my damn hardest to make sure that whoever is elected is still held accountable to those three things. And to everybody watching this, I hope that you do the same thing. Hold whichever one of us is elected to making the public governing process as open and accountable as it needs to be.
Time.
Okay, thank you, Jackson. And Misty Wittenberg.
Yeah, so thank you again, everybody. And also amazing. This is probably the best, most well-rounded group of questions I've ever had. And I don't think, Malika, I've ever congratulated you on your well-earned public recognition, and you put together another great forum. And also, Ms. Burton is the most pleasant timekeeper I've ever had in a forum, so thank you. I'm Misty Wittenberg. You can reach out to me at misty@wittenberg.net. You can reach out to me at mistywittenberg.com. That's my website. Facebook, I had to remember it's Misty Wittenberg. It's Facebook /Misty Wittenberg for clerk. I am not on the ballot, and I am not on the ballot because I have pushed myself to be someone who is sometimes
15
a target
seconds.
of thank you, of our officials' dislike of being monitored. And I've always put ahead of myself the importance of Foia and the importance of the clerk's office. And as soon as I didn't have that barrier, I rejoined. Thank you also to all our participants.
Okay, thank you so much, Misty. Thank you again to all the candidates. Wish you all the best. You all bring something special, and I can't wait to see who's going to be our next city clerk. So everyone out there, please get out there for February 23rd. Get out there and vote for our next city clerk. Well, who's going to remain on the ballot for the following. So get out there and vote, everyone, please, please, please. And as they said, you can still get a mail in. Please engage, stay engaged. You can't complain later if you've been sleeping all this time and not paying attention. And then you wake up one day and like, who voted that person in? They're making these decisions. They're doing this, they're doing that. This is your opportunity to have a voice, a say in it. So please, please, everyone, get out there to the polls and vote. Reach out to all of these candidates, ask them more questions. They are opening the door to you to ask them more questions. So please do that. And we have gone over, so I appreciate everyone's time. And I've been ending on time, but this was a great forum, and it's such an important office. So again, thank you to everyone who tuned in today, and stay tuned for more individual candidate interviews. And we got April coming up, and I think it's going to get even more intense. So you all stay tuned. Okay. Thank you all. Good night and be safe. Stay warm. Stay warm, everyone, please.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much, Malika, for your time and everything. I know you do this for free, which is just, I hope people know they should be donating to your effort as well, actively.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you.